Good evening from the Channel's newsroom here in London. The number of people killed by the new coronavirus has risen by 97, the highest number of casualties in a day. In a show of support, the Chinese President Xi Jinping visited a Beijing neighbourhood while wearing a protective face mask and saw one of the designated hospitals where those infected with the coronavirus are staying. The total number of deaths in China is now 908, but the number of newly infected people per day has stabilised. Monday marks the first working day after Beijing's extended holiday due to the coronavirus outbreak. Across China, 40,171 people are infected, while 187,518 are under medical observation. Meanwhile, 60 more people have tested positive on a cruise ship quarantined in Japan, meaning 130 out of 3,700 passengers have caught the virus. Heavily armed police and soldiers in El Salvador have forced their way into Parliament, demanding the approval of a $109 million loan to better equip them. They entered the building as President Nayib Bukele was about to address lawmakers. Earlier, he gave them 7 days to back his loan plan. Opposition politicians called the appearance of armed men in Parliament an unprecedented act of intimidation. El Salvador has one of the highest murder rates in the world. Most of the violence is carried out by criminal gangs that operate across Central America. New South Wales, the state where nearly a third of Australia's population lives, saw its heaviest rainfall in almost 20 years, with severe weather and flash flood warnings. Several towns were evacuated and more than 50 schools were closed in the state. Meanwhile, over the weekend, 13 flood rescue operations were launched and the Emergency Services Minister warned the public to be vigilant in the flood conditions. The country's Bureau of Meteorology said the region had seen around 8 inches of rainfall in the past 24 hours. However, the New South Wales Rural Fire Service said that the rains had helped to extinguish over 30 fires since Friday, describing it as the most positive news we've had in some time. Storms have battered countries across Europe, cancelling hundreds of flights and damaging buildings and infrastructure. Planes wobbled in mid-air as they prepared to land at Zurich airport on Monday as Storm Chiara lashed northern Europe, with heavy rain and wind gusts forcing the cancellation of hundreds of flights across the continent. The coast of northern France was battered by 100-mile-an-hour winds and massive waves. In the UK, a 58-year-old man was killed after Chiara caused a tree to collapse on his car. There was also severe flooding in parts, and hundreds of thousands of people were left without power. Meanwhile, in Germany, in Frankfurt, a crane fell onto the city's cathedral, damaging the roof of the Roman Catholic Gothic church. The Kenyan government will provide snacks for the first 30,000 people who will arrive at the former President Daniel Arap Moi's burial on Wednesday. The Rift Valley Regional Coordinator said there will be a seat, fizzy drink, bread and water for 30,000 people who will be sitting under a dome tent. The rest of the mourners will be allowed into the home but will not get sitting space in the tent. He said the snacks were also available on a first-come, first-served basis, urging mourners to arrive early. More than half of the seats at stake in the Irish general election have been filled following what has been a historic result for Sinn Féin. With all first preferences counted, the left-wing Republican Party has taken 24.5% of the vote. No one party will win enough seats for an outright majority. About 100 of the 160 seats have been declared, but negotiations to establish a government could be prolonged. The South Korean film Parasite has been named Best Picture at this year's Oscars, becoming the first non-English language film to take the top prize. Renée Zellweger won Best Actress for playing Judy Garland in Judy. Joaquin Phoenix was named Best Actor for Joker, while Brad Pitt and Laura Dern scooped the Supporting Acting Awards for their roles in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Marriage Story, respectively.
Parasite.
But it was Parasite, the Korean satire about two families from different classes in Seoul, that stole the show, picking up 4 awards in total, including Best Picture. And finally, Europe's audacious solar orbiter probe has lifted off in its quest to study the sun from close quarters.
Liftoff. Release.
The €1.5 billion mission is packed with cameras and sensors that should reveal remarkable new insights on the workings of our star. Scientists want to better understand what drives its dynamic behaviour. The sun will occasionally eject billions of tons of matter and entangled magnetic fields that can disrupt activity at Earth. The worst of these storms will trip the electronics on satellites, interfere with radio communications, and even knock over power grids. Researchers hope the knowledge gained from Solar Orbiter will improve the models used to forecast the worst of those outbursts. And that's your international news around the world in 5.